Good afternoon. I'm Gloria Nelson, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. We're so glad to have you join us this afternoon for our TUG Connects 365 programming. As you settle in and get ready for the start of today's webinar, let me give a brief introduction for TUG, the usergroup.org, for both our current members and those of you who represent organizations that have not yet joined our community of in-for distribution software users. Now, you've all heard that phrase before, that knowledge is power, and I can say with confidence that after today's presentation, you'll be waking up tomorrow with a little more of both. Today is but one of many of our in-depth sessions in our TUG Connects 365 series. TUG webinars, online forums, and member events facilitate the timely exchange of ideas and information to help you work smarter and with more confidence. That is a powerful combination. If you're currently a member, it even pays to get more involved. And if you're not, please visit our website to discover why 2,300 heads are better than one to help you be the best at what you do. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Jim Spellos, feel that he doesn't ever need an introduction, president of Meeting You, who is going to be taking us through the 2020 edition of 60 Apps in 60 Minutes. Jim, it's all yours.
Gloria, thank you so much, and good afternoon, or maybe good morning, but probably good afternoon to you all. One thing to note right off the bat is we are using this whole session through a desktop computer, although we're talking about apps. So we're going to showcase some of them from browsers, but there's so much more rich information that's out there when you do use them. So we're going to just go through this so fast. I got to tell you that I sort of lied in the conversation. What I mean by that is 60 apps. Nah, I think it's up to 75 at this point. So just put your seatbelts on, but we're going to start finding out what you use. This is a text-based poll, not within the Zoom platform, but you're going to go to your phone and you're going to text 513-918 and your preferred, your favorite, your must-have app to 22333. So you're actually texting to 22333, and then the text is going to be 513-918 space and whatever the app is. So on the screen right now, if that app would have been Google, that's what the text message will look like. Standard messaging rates, of course, always apply. And what we're going to do is come back to this when we take our first Q&A break to see where you all are, because it's really interesting to me what people use. Now, the idea of the session is not to spend a lot of time on apps that you probably know by default, your social media apps and stuff like that, but we're going to hit through different categories. We'll be able to, through the PC, show one example of that, and hopefully we'll get some good Q&A about apps that people use and like to use. But people always ask me, what are my must-haves? What are the ones that I don't leave the house without? And while this list keeps ebbing and flowing, I'll talk about three right now. I'm going to talk about Evernote, Waze, and Pocket. And in fact, we'll even showcase two of them. Let's start with the Evernote conversation. Evernote is your cross-platform note-taking app. There should be no surprise here about an app like this being on the list. The thing is, I'm always going to talk about apps that are platform agnostic. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't matter whether you're using Android or I, that it's going to work across all devices. Because apps such as this, which allow you to share information with other people. For example, when I was doing my Excel session for a few weeks ago, I was using Evernote as my approach to be able to sort out all my information. But the great thing about tools such as Evernote is that they are agnostic. So if I'm on my iPad, which I do have, and my Android phone, it will synchronize them in real time. A lot of people like other apps like these that are out there. You know, Google has Note, and Google has Keep, and Microsoft has Notes. Use the one that works best for you in your environment. But when we're talking about the ultimate type of apps that are out there to allow people to enhance productivity, a must-have has to be a note-taking app that plays across the grain. And in fact, I'd love for you in the chat within the Zoom, is to say which type of apps do you use like this that you use on a regular basis. So number one, Evernote. Number two, Waze. Really, do we have to have this conversation? I guess the only part of the conversation about Waze, and for those of you who don't know what Waze is, it is their driving app, which gives you directions from point A to point B. Many of you are going to say, well, wait a minute. Google Maps does that. And in fact, what's really interesting is Google owns Waze. They bought them a number of years ago, as well as Maps. but the functionalities are slightly different. I find ways to be a far more useful tool while driving, whereas on the micro level, if I'm walking somewhere, I like Google Maps, especially with their latest integration of augmented reality into that space. But if you need the GPS system, I mean, why get it in the car? I got a new car about a year ago, and they were upselling me all of these GPS packages. I go, nah, I don't need that. And I guess the salesperson probably said, this guy's a Luddite. He doesn't know anything about technology. The reality is I have a far better one on my phone, so I use it there. Waze, number 2. Number 3 on my top apps, Pocket. Pocket is one of these apps that people might have and not know, or have used once and forget about. Pocket oftentimes is called, or was called, Read It Later. It was the name of the app a number of years ago. What Pocket allows you to do is take anything that you are utilizing, anything that you're reading, and allows you with 1 or 2 clicks to quickly share it and to be able to save it. The great thing, again, it's cross-platform, so once I save it, it's on all my devices. So I'm in the desktop version of Pocket right now. We're going to actually take a look at Pocket even again a little later on as we talk about this compatibility issue. But for me, the Pocket issue here is to be able to identify and archive everything that I like, to be able to keep it, store it for later, save it, share it, whatever I want to do. We'll see in the upper right corner of the screen, there's an upgrade feature, and that gets me to talking about free versus freemium. As we all know, so many of these apps are free to try and then have a paid version to be able to utilize if you require that functionality. Do you require it with Pocket, or stepping back, do you require it with Evernote? That choice is yours. I always tell people, don't buy it unless you're over 100% certain that those upgrades are worth the price. Price usually isn't going to be that much. It's, you know, maybe $3 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month at most for really a pretty expensive app. But use these, try these at no cost, download them, and if they really do work for you, and Pocket is one of those, because I'm always sharing and curating content, that I need to have a functionality that gives me a seamless approach to be able to take the information that I find and be able to get it to other people. So 3 platform agnostic must-haves: Evernote, Waze, Pocket. Really wouldn't leave the house without any of them. Okay, we got to talk about Google. I'm not going to dive deep here, but there are so many different apps we need to know about. So first of all, Google does have an app, and most people don't know that because they just use the Google search box that's on their screen. But if you download the Google app, you get a slightly different story, because what you're getting there is the information that allows you to search with customized, curated news content based on Google identifying and understanding the types of articles, the types of information that you are most interested in. It actually is a really good, very quick news reader to be able to see what's happening in your sphere of influence. Pretty cool stuff. Do you need it? Google's everywhere. Maps. Clearly, we all use maps, especially when, for me, when I'm doing walking as opposed to driving around. Google News, one of the best news curators out there. I love the deep dive on Google News too, because it allows me to segment information by topic or by time. Really gives me that customized approach to getting information. Although later on, I'm going to talk about my absolute favorite news curation tool, and it's not Google News. So more on that in a bit. Drive between Google Sheets and Word and the Google Slides, we have great capability there. Translate, fantastic. Tasks, if you're in a Google group. Lens sort of is the outsider that people don't know about, but it's their artificial intelligence tool for taking pictures and identifying what's in the picture based on photo recognition. Kind of cool, kind of creepy at the same time, but Lens is one of a multitude of different AI-based solutions that are out there across all the big players on the market. So Google-licious, we don't need to show them, we all know about it. Okay, we're going to group sometimes this information in kind of common sense groupings. Task managers. And again, I'm going to ask you to put into the chat that's here which one you use, because I could go through all of these and everyone could say, no, I don't use Todoist, I like Trello, or I like Asana, or I use Remember the Milk, and there's so many that are out there. But to me, if I had to identify, if you're looking for a good task management tool, outside of, by the way, and I'm going to back up for a second, Google Tasks, which is a very simple single person task integration tool, but the Todoist, Trello, and Asana Troika are three of the steadier, longer-term approaches that we have in terms of really good task management information that's out there. So I see somebody's used Trello, people haven't used any. And you know, the bottom line with all of this is you use it if you need it. I know some folks who still use Excel for their task management. Remember, anytime we talk about an app or a device by nature, we're not saying that there's an ultimate right or wrong. We're saying is, does it fit what you need to do? In these cases, these three have been around for a long time and do a really, really good job. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit further into the team tools. And really there are two that are up there that people know about and usually argue about, Slack versus Teams. I wanted to put Flock up there just so we know we could be out, you can go outside of the big players here and still get really good collaboration, notification, file sharing tools out there. But for the most part, it's become a Slack versus Teams world. Now, I use both. Quite frankly, I'm a bigger fan of Slack and have been for a while. I like the idea of Slack because it allows me to have different channels. It's straightforward to use. It gives me the information that I need to have in different areas. Free, as is Teams, integrates with a huge number of APIs that allow me to integrate other solutions in there. So to me, the idea and the conversation here isn't Slack versus Teams versus Flock. It's how quickly can we intellectually get away from the dependence on email as a tool to increase productivity, these tools, because email tends to decrease productivity with all of the noise that comes through those tools. So I'm a Slack user. Some of you might like Teams. Doesn't matter to me, but I think any one of these really has an application and a use that's out there. Very much a great, great approach to enhancing your functionality. Now let's get super geeky. I got three here. We're going to talk about two. We'll showcase one: Glide, Thing, and Duet Display. This might get into the area of now we don't know what you're talking about. Thing is a network analyzer. If you need to find out on your network speed or problem areas or IP addresses, you really want to get the technical information that's out there, whether it's at work or more likely at home. Thing is that tool, that all-in-one Ginsu knife, slice and dice, all that information that you need. Love having it on my phone. I probably use it a couple of times a year, but when I do, it gets me out of big jams because it gives me the information I need without having to go online and digging up for different similar type of tools. Duet Display is the best of breed I've seen in terms of using my iPad as a second screen to my computer without any cables, straight with the Bluetooth, and very, very, very low latency. So I've been using it for a while now. There are other ones that I've used previously. This is the one that I feel allows me to take either PC or Mac and get that second screen right onto the iPad seamlessly. Pretty cool stuff. The third of these three here is Glide. And Glide answers the question. And if you were in the hackathon session a month ago, we talked about Glide. Actually, I think we even started with the Glide conversation. Glide answers the question that a lot of good apps tend to answer. And that is, what one thing can you solve that will make my life simpler, easier, more productive? And let's take the look, and I'm going to actually go into Firefox and into Google Sheets. So what you're going to see here is a basic sheet, very, very similar. And you know, if you were to share this with a lot of people, it's not visual, and it's really just data like any good spreadsheet is, right? But the idea here is with Glide, at no cost, you can turn that into this seamlessly. And I did say at no cost. So what we see here from the sheet, which gives me the date and the links and the text, I can very easily, no coding, no price, create this. Way, way cool. One of my absolute favorites. And in fact, get used to me saying that, because I'll probably say that 20 times with these apps today, but I love utilizing Glide. Clearly it's freemium, which means if you want to take away branding or more bells and whistles, or even get into a little bit of coding in there to really make your text sing and go where you want it to go, you can do that. But either way you go, any way you go, these three bring you to that next level of utilizing these as not just a productivity tool for word processing, spreadsheet, and presentations, but for all the different things that you might need to do. Moving forward on the conversation here, we're going to talk about visual stuff. Now, gosh, at this point, do I even need to put Zoom up here in a conversation? But I want to talk about the other four instead. I want to talk about ScreenMeet, which is a tool that allows you to share the contents of your phone onto somebody else's phone. So it's essentially a phone-to-phone connection. Only one person needs to have the ScreenMeet application where you can take that information and send it to somebody else seamlessly. So if you're doing sales or service and you want to show your client or your customer what's on the screen, not a bad approach at all to have a tool like this. One heads up, I believe still they only allow 4 or 5 uses in the free of the freemium version before they start paying and charging. I think it's around $10 a month, but a great sales services tool. Voxer is sort of that hybrid of texting versus voicemail. The folks who created Voxer, think about it as a walkie-talkie, okay? Let's just take it that way. But think about Voxer as a tool that if bandwidth is really down and all the phone cellular lines are down, Voxer uses such low bandwidth that it might be able to fill that void to allow people to connect. I know in a lot of areas over the past couple of years where we've had natural disasters, a lot of people have turned to Voxer or have used Voxer to be able to get that call made or get that text out when all the other approaches. Now, I don't necessarily believe that any of these tools are impervious to natural disasters. It seems that Voxer does a pretty good job of keeping their bandwidth on the very, very straight and narrow. Lastly here, because we're doing so much at home, we have to think about second cameras. We might want to think about a second camera for a Zoom presentation or to do some sort of pre-recorded presentation for your organization. Why not use your phone as the second camera? And if you do that without having to go all the way down on cables, you might want to consider an IP type of camera. And in fact, the last two of these are applications that are just that. They are IP applications. Both IP camera and Alfred Camera play in the space. Where they have sort of sold their mark is in home security tools. And I think a lot of people are using these with their home security solutions where they're taking those older phones and they're putting it to use, having it there as a camera that can be on 24/7 once it's plugged in. So to me, these are the two best of breed IP cameras that are out there. Any one of these tools clearly has a great video component as well as a communication component. Okay, there's an app for that, Taft, and we'll go through this a couple of times. I want to talk about for a little while security. And if you've heard me talk over the years, you know it's an area that's a sweet spot for me. So we're going to actually move to the next slide where we expand on the security conversation. We're going to put it into a couple of different areas. We're going to start with VPNs. TunnelBear, Easy VPN. By the way, I will never tell you what you should use. I will always share with you what I do use. And I do use TunnelBear as my VPN. Now notice right now, as you're going to probably see pretty clearly, it's off. Why? I'm home and I have a pretty secure network here. But the minute you start going out, and especially back in the day and in the future in the day, where we're back frequently at hotels and at coffee shops and in other public Wi-Fi areas, these tools are must-haves to be able to turn on to encrypt what's coming out of your computer so they don't get spied upon and stolen by people outside of there. So be careful, please, gang, with VPNs. And I know some of you use them already, and some of you know this, but it never hurts to repeat it, that there are a lot of, shall we say, bad actors out there with virtual private networks who claim to be doing the opposite of what they are actually doing. They claim to be protecting you while they're dropping spyware, malware on your devices. Do your due diligence. Again, I'm not going to recommend, but I am going to tell you that both TunnelBear and EasyVPN, Nord is another one, NORD, that have come incredibly high rated and ranked and are very reputable. Always though, just do your work to make sure you don't get a VPN just because a friend of yours says it's cheap and or it's free, because I don't want you to use something that you think's protecting you that's doing the opposite. Next on the conversation point for security, password managers. Dashlane, what I use, LastPass, great tools, allows you to have a single master password. I think I actually have dash line up here that I can quickly showcase. There we go. So it allows you to have a single master password. So if I was to go, and yeah, I'm not going to show you my passwords just so we're clear on that, okay? But if I was to go to Amazon and edit this item and somebody was to steal this and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's this password, all I have to do is hit the show button, but no. You see, everything's protected by the master password. Every other password, if you actually saw this password, you'd go, I can never remember it, which is just what you want. You want a password that people can't remember. The master password, however, is just the opposite. It's the password that everybody needs to remember and better remember. Why? Because they don't keep track of it. So whether you go with Dashlane or LastPass, both really good, you're going to be able to have some sanity, have some peace of mind that once you do get hacked, because you do realize that we fall into two categories in this conversation. The categories are those who have been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked. So if you fall into either one of those categories, having a password manager clearly is going to protect you a lot better. Next up on the conversation here, Malwarebytes. I just had a long conversation with a client the other day who had an issue of spoofing where emails were being sent out under her name. And I asked whether she had a anti-malware solution. And she goes, no, I don't need one. I have a Mac. And when I stopped choking, I said, you understand that while Macs are more secure than Android, it doesn't mean that that you can be oblivious with your protection and your security. I've been a huge fan for years of Malwarebytes on PCs. They are available for Mac as well, and they are available for mobile devices as well. So something really important to take note of. Brave is on there. Brave is a browser, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari is what we use, but Brave tends to have a lot more built-in security and protection in there, not tracking you, not selling your information, not retargeting, as it were, that the big players are doing. So if you're really concerned about your privacy and security, Brave, either mobile or desktop, is not a bad solution. And while it might not be as productive as you'll see sometimes, Brave clearly is an option that gives you a lot of security, a huge amount of bang for the buck, which would be free. Lastly, and we're going to go to some Q&A right after this, is Signal. And Signal is a tool that is the only real email tool that provides end-to-end encryption. So if that type of security and safety is up in front in terms of what you need, it's probably the way you need to consider going. Gloria, I'd love to know if we have any questions or comments. And while we do that, I'm going to take a look at where we were with the different polls that we did, or the one poll that we did. So let's see what we can do. So any questions?
Yeah, a couple questions here. The VPNs that you have, TunnelBear and EasyVPN, are those agnostic apps? Okay. And then what's your favorite mobile app is another question that has popped up.
Well, two things. In terms of the VPNs, they are agnostic. They can work on any device. In fact, when you get a subscription for them, they will play across all your devices. So I have my TunnelBear on my desktop PC, on my iPad, and on my Android phone, and it works seamlessly across all of them. And again, that's why I love those type of tools, Gloria, because they have the ability, regardless of what you're using, to be able to work seamlessly and not within a particular infrastructure. Second question about what my favorite app is. Well, there's about 75 of them that are out there clearly, because I love all of these. But if I had to say which app do I go to the most often, other than the security stuff, which clearly is running in the background all the time, it's Pocket and one other, which I haven't talked about yet, but I will, and I'll mention it when I do, that allow me to manage and curate information and then be able to share it with other people. I happen to always be a fan of apps that give me that capability of not only reading and getting the content that I need, but seamlessly sharing it, whether it's through social or other tools, with my colleagues and my constituents.
We have content flying at us faster than the speed of light, which I love about you, Jim, because you're always just rapid fire with this content. So let's see what the viewing audience is using in terms of their favorite apps right now.
No surprise right here. Google is the one that comes up for most people. A couple of them, one of them I don't know. I don't know Reface. I'd love for the person who mentioned that one in chat put that in there. I probably should know it, and we'll get crucified for not knowing it, but Outlook, OneNote, YouTube, Facebook, Magnifier, great apps. It's such an interesting conversation to have because everybody tends to have a specific need, and that's where that must app for business lies in. So there's never a right or wrong in this conversation. There's always what's working for you. For me, I know the tools that I talk about today, I'm probably going to be using tomorrow too, but there might be a new one that all of a sudden sort of offsets it as the head of the information that I use the most.
And I
So
find too that wherever we are in our cycle of work, whether we're in an office, whether we're on the road, where we are in terms of maybe product launch or, moving into a different software upgrade, whatever, a lot of things, will move and shift in terms of the app that I'm into most of the time. Another poster said, no question, just a comment, Milanote is another good app.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I have not used it, and I completely agree with that as well. It's amazing what's out there when we think about all these different apps. My take always, and we'll talk about the note-taking app infrastructure right now because we've mentioned it a few times, is that there's not a bad one that's out there as long as it does exactly what you need it to do. But what I always think about is, since I don't know what other people outside an organization are using in terms of Android versus I versus Mac versus PC, is I want to make sure that the apps that are outward facing are ones that play across everyone that I might need to contact. That's why I talk about platform agnostic so often. I think it's one of the most important things we can do. That's why, for example, I didn't put FaceTime on that video slide. FaceTime is really good technology, but it's only for Apple users.
Right.
And I want people to think out of that box. I want not to not use Mac or iPad. My iPad I've had longer than I've had any other device in here. I always want to use the device that works best for what you need it to do. And if it's a cross section of different devices of different products, I want to make sure we can use them all and not have to have different apps in each infrastructure.
Another question populated, is there an app that manages my personal calendar and my work calendar into one calendar? I'm still using two calendars, one on my iPhone and one on my PC.
Yeah, interesting. I tend to use Google Calendar for everything, and I have it integrated with external and internal calendars, with personal and professional. But then again, I'm speaking from a perspective of really being tied into the Google infrastructure. That's what I've bought into as a independent business person, and it works great for me. Some people like third-party stuff. I can't say I'm that familiar. Calendly, I think, is one that's out there, and I'm love for people in the chat to share their answers to that as well. But I would initially go to a Google and see whether that's going to serve all your purposes, because you probably have used it before, and clearly we all tend to have Gmail accounts at this point, so you don't even have to sign up for anything else.
Well, and for myself, I'm an Apple user and I am completely, I'm totally immersed into the Apple culture. And so for me, I actually use my iCalendar on all my devices, but I also have the ability to have it linked with my Google account. So anything that comes in via Google, I get an invitation from, actually populates within my Mac,
Yep.
my Mac climate there.
Again, that's the thing. You ask the question of apps, and oftentimes the first response has to be, well, what devices do you have? And that becomes, okay, you have this device. If I was talking just I only, I'd focus probably on a couple of other tools that I'm not even going to mention today. And the same is true with Android only. So again, no right or wrong in the app conversation, just a fascinating conversation of what works and what doesn't for different people. So I'm going to move on, if that's okay. I'm sure we'll have some questions later. Where do I go? Oh, yeah. Gang, I wish I was with you right now to be able to show this to you. And I can't, but augmented virtual reality. This stuff is here. This is what I want you to do. If you're lucky enough right now, if you have the app PhotoMath already downloaded, I want you to open it up and hover over one of those equations. Because what's going to happen is, utilizing augmented reality, is it's going to take that equation and instantaneously on your phone give you not only the answer, but the step-by-step solution. So the idea of augmented reality, using a secondary device to see things that aren't visible to the naked eye, are applying more and more across all areas. In terms of the augmented tools that are out there, and this is a moving target, because some of the early ones that I love to use aren't even around anymore, but I tend to use both RAW and Zapper as tools that allow me to create and see augmented reality. If you want to do something really cool, and you happen to be in a wine store at some point, not suggesting you should drink wine or anything like that, but there's an app called Living Wine Labels. And if you go there and on a number of different products, and I'm actually blanking right now on the product that does all these great Australian visualizations of people that were incarcerated in the 1800s, and they come to life on their wine bottles. I'll remember before the end of the session. I guess I haven't drank that wine enough lately, but it's amazing how augmented reality can really capture you in. But when we're talking about alternate realities, we also got to give a shout out to virtual reality. And there is a really cool tool. If you need to visualize your space for a client or a customer or do so for them, you might be driven toward an app called Matterport Capture, which works with 360 virtual reality, 360 cameras, and turns them into what they call dollhouse effects, where people can literally walk through and see the entire space on a visual representation, either on their screen, or if you want to go completely, VR in the headset and the goggles. But the Matterport Capture, really, really cool stuff. I started playing with it a few months ago. One heads up on that, it is definitely out for iOS. The Android is still in beta testing. So I've only been using the iOS version of it, but great, great stuff. So Augmented Virtual, and by the way, if you haven't heard, if you don't know, by 2021, if not early 2022, Apple will be coming out with their augmented reality glasses. That will be glasses that will be tied into an augmented infrastructure. And as much as I'm not a huge Apple fan to begin with, I do get that this single device might be what drives us into the augmented and virtual reality universe that this decade's likely to become, just because the tools are so amazingly spatial and amazingly useful and creative. So augmented virtual, bunch of cool stuff there. Handwriting. Okay, the two of them that are there, same company, My Script Calculator, My Script Memo. But here's what I like about My Script Calculator. It certainly does the approach of solving a single issue, which is I got to do a quick calculation. And yeah, I can go to Google or I can find my calculator app. But what if I open up this app and wrote on my screen the calculation, as you see in the left area there, and then it does the calculation just by hitting a button that says calculate. Way cool. If nothing else but for giggles, try it out. My Script Calculator does the same with text, with optical character recognition for My Script Memo, but I like the number thing better. Maybe I'm just a numbers geek. I don't know. Okay. Gloria, when we were talking, and we're not going to go to a conversation right now, but just referring back, I said there was another app that I wanted to talk about. That's sort of my daily double of my favorites, and that's Flipboard. But before I get to Flipboard, all these apps fill a very similar space, which is how do I take content, customize it, or what I like to call curate, what a lot of people like to call curate it, so the information can be filtered in a way that I get to see what I'm most interested in. Nuzzle, Feedly both do a really good job of this, but my daily newspaper is actually nothing if it's not just Flipboard. So let me show you something while we're here. I'm going to go to the Flipboard, should be here somewhere, and this could be an oops on my part, not having it set up here. There we go, Flipboard. Flipboard is my news reading curation app. Essentially how it works is it learns you using artificial intelligence as well as their pre-selected favorite sources to provide content. So example, I'm always looking at stuff that is in the technology area, and is an article for Apple Lead Our Tech and all about the 12 and all of that. But the great thing about these tools is on the phone, I have a simple approach, and I'm going to scroll all the way down here to be able to get the information. Nah, I'm not even going to bother with this, is to find the information that allows me to share it using Pocket. I find that it doesn't work as well, unfortunately, on the desktop or the laptop as it does on the mobile device, which is why I always use this on my phone, but I'm actually looking at a particular piece of content in the morning. I'm reading my customized paper. I get it in Flipboard with one tap. I share it and tag it to Pocket. Additionally, within Flipboard, I'm able to create my own magazines that I can take information, put it into, and then share it with my customers and my clients and my constituents to be able to make sure that they're always on top of the information that's out there. So to me, any good device has at least one of these curation tools, 3 that are great. Again, my favorite, Flipboard, the one I probably use more than any other tool, just because it's replaced the newspaper. And that's a really heavy thing to state, that I haven't literally picked up a newspaper in probably a couple of years. But you don't need to right now. We have all the digital tools, as long as we understand that the filters that are out there give us narrow casting, as it were, of content. Still, great, great stuff. There's an app for that, number 2, Tunity. I used to talk about this in the context of airport lounges. Now I talk about it in terms of a couple looking to maybe one person watch some TV at night and one person have some silence. Tunity allows you with the app to take your phone, focus it on whatever's on the TV screen. It will then automatically pick up the channel. It will send the sound to your phone, where you can use a headset to be able to listen to it. And anytime you change the channel, you just have to reconnect the app itself with the particular channel, and it'll stream wirelessly right to you. Some people might say Bluetooth headset will do that as well, but when you're in a public space utilizing a tool like Tunity, perhaps you're in one of those coffee bars, because those are the types of bars we frequent these days, right? And maybe they have a TV and the game's on. You want to hear the game, but everyone's talking. Well, I know we're not in there right now, but we will get back there again. So be with me on this conversation. A tool like Tunity, great, great tool that just takes that sound just from seeing the image on the screen and bringing it right to your phone. Way cool stuff. Speaking of things I want to do again, it's travel, and hopefully we will be doing that again. But when we do, there are some great travel tools out there. Hopper has been for a number of years sort of the award-winning app to get predictive fare information. How much is the fare from point A to point B, and is it likely to go up or down between now and the time of the flight? And if so, when should I buy it? Hopper is the app for that. And quite frankly, it is one of those apps that, as I've said earlier on, it's my favorite app, depending on if I really need to use that at that particular point. Love having it in the whole bailiwick of tools that I have on my devices. Now, secret flying is different. I haven't used that one yet because I just learned about it a few months ago, or early part of the year. It's where a lot of the travel sites, airlines, put these last minute deals together and put it out there for heavily, heavily discounted, 80, 90% off, to be able to go to different places. And if you're a member of the club, you get that information. One day I'm going to try to use it, but I thought so much of it from a couple of people who told me about it that I want to talk about it here. In terms of getting around your local city, I've been a huge fan of City Mapper for years. And it's easy, interestingly, is your passport renewal tool that allows you to actually, instead of having to go to the passport office, do all the work at home, send it in, and have your passport sent to you. I actually used it for my renewal last year. It was, I'll call it, it's somewhat easy, because I had a little issue getting the perfect picture because of all the restrictions they have in the background. So I had to end up going to CVS to get the picture taken, and then it wasn't done at the same time. So I was getting really frustrated. And you think this whole story is about not liking the tool, but I reached out to them and they told me exactly what I needed to do, helped me within 5 minutes, didn't need to leave my house after going to CVS, and 3 weeks later, passport arrives. I paid them, yeah, it was about $40 for the process. I do it again 10 years from now. Next up, pick tools, and there's so many that are out there. We start with Snapseed. You notice that the other 5 all start with P, some alliteration thing happening here. Snapseed has a P in it as well, is a Google-based tool, Google-owned tool, that is probably your best tool for doing, say it, photoshopping on your mobile device. Now, I know all the cameras that are out there and people are loyal to their Android or loyal to their i, but this is the best mobile tool for being able to put filters and customize and really, really edit your pictures on a mobile device. Free of charge, been around, actually they were around for years before Google bought them, and at this point that was easily 5 to 6 years ago. And the thing that always resonates with me when talking about Snapseed is that anytime I'm in a real live session and there's a professional photographer taking pictures, they will always at the end of the session come up to me and go, yep, that's the tool I use as well. If you need to take your pictures and create some really cool video with it, Pixaloop is a free tool that allows you to do that. And Pick, Play, Post also has a very similar approach where they are taking the pictures that you've taken or the videos you've taken and allow you to customize it and create really cool artistic approaches. Prisma, which you can see in the picture, can actually put different types of filters on there. I know it's done in Instagram, it's done in Snapchat, it's done in all the tools, but I like when I have a better, stronger set of tools to be able to work with. And I think Prisma clearly has a lot more artistic approach. Picture Scan, Picture Mine, two different apps doing a similar thing, which is digitizing your physical photos if you're of an age where you have a lot of physical photos and being able to have them in the digital space. Picture Scan is owned by Google. They're both freemium tools, both good tools. So consider either one. You know, we go to the movies at some point, or maybe even at home, and we can't find the stop thing on the app, and we got to go to the bathroom. Okay, so you go to this app. I won't even say the name. You can see it on the screen, and almost every movie that's out there, it'll tell you when the plot starts to actually not become a huge part of what's happening, where maybe it's a 3 or 4 minute lull, and I'll tell you when you can go, so you don't miss anything. There is truly an app for anything. Let's keep going on. You know, we start getting into this conversation of tools, and there's lots of tools that are out there. I have a hard time even categorizing. These I've just bundled into more really cool productivity tools. First one is Haystack. You know, again, good apps solve a particular problem, a particular omission that we can't do. Haystack is the, well, I forgot my business cards conversation. And Haystack allows you to have a digital business card that you can easily send, text, beam, shake and stir into your neighbor's phone. They have to, of course, want to receive it to be able to give them your content electronically. I always have a Haystack business cards because if I don't remember my own, and quite frankly, I haven't used a real one in a while, it's easy enough for me to be able to send people that information. The next two are automation tools, and they sort of fall together. IFTTT, which stands for If This Then That, and Zapier. And if you're using any of the Home Hubs or Google Nest or stuff like that, you may already have encountered some of these. Now, I'm going to showcase IFTTT because that's the one that I use more often, although I know they both are very, very similar, where these applets are things that you can easily create. So obviously, I have applets with my Home Wemo to be able to switch off my Google Home and switch off the lights are in the house, turn it on, turn it off different times, have all this connected. I also have, and it's interesting to note, because you can't use the Google Voice Assistants or the Alexas to be able to trigger a 911, but you can use an IFTTT to then tell the assistant to trigger an emergency email blast, which is a really cool and potentially life-saving issue in the house to be able to have that set up. So I like the integration, and for people who are very, very comfortable with technology, the use of these tools to integrate information that's being posted socially and you want to share it elsewhere, you want to put it into a document so you can save it for later, all the tools work great. Prezi we're using right now. We've gone non-PowerPoint on this. To me, the presentation conversation is a similar one, which is use what you're comfortable with, because a tool is a tool is a tool. How you use it clearly makes a difference. And lastly, Doodle, it's old school, but again, good scheduling, multiple person, simple, easy interface, free of charge. All those things play in the space that I really, really like to make sure that we have something in that area. As I do with this, we don't have fax machines anymore. We don't need fax machines anymore. I always, except for my doctors who obviously only use fax machines, and that's another conversation. But scanning, sending stuff, take a pick. Genius Scan, I think, is the best of the three, but marginally DocScan, ScanBot. Having one of these at all times on your phone, take a picture of content, be able to scan it, send it right away. It does a great job with character recognition, so I like to use these tools rather than just basic stuff that's already preloaded on your phone. Got to have one of those, doesn't matter which one. Okay, so we have a mobile device and an emergency happens. And if you know my story, you know about 4 years ago I had a stroke, and I was very fortunate in a lot of things. And one was because I'm an idiot and didn't have my phone set up to be able to take care of me in case of emergency, in case first responders came to me and I couldn't speak. Now, first responders did come to me, but I could speak and I was able to communicate. But an app like ICE Standard, it's called ICE Standard Plus Auto, allows you to put all of your details, whether you're on medication, whether you have a history of some sort of medical condition. So if a first responder gets to you, they'll be able to access it. Now you're going to ask the question, well, how can they access it if you have your phone locked, which you should? And the answer is that these apps, whether you're working with them on an Android or an iProduct, will all sit on the home screen, actually on the lock screen, so that they can either be read or accessed without needing to get past your security. Please just have it for yourself and have it for your family. Just a great, great approach to be able to make sense of why we have these devices with us at all times. Two other great tools: First Aid, which is from the Red Cross, just tells you what to do in different cases of any sort of injury, illness, in waiting for the right medical help, what you need to do to make that process hopefully be as safe and proper and life-saving as possible. And Life 360 allows you to connect with your friends and your family, especially your family, to know where they are at all times. I do understand, as we get back into a more robust wandering lifestyle, that apps like Life 360 tend to always connect to the internet and your location's always on, which some people don't like. I happen to never have my location on unless I needed it until I had my stroke. And at that point, guess what? I now understand that it always needs to be on. So they might run a little more battery, but at the same time, they're going to be great tools in case something happens to you or someone you love. Moving forward, we'll keep with the health productivity approach. A couple of things to note: Johnson & Johnson have a great, simple 7-minute workout app that if you're on the road or you just don't have a lot of time, just take out your phone, access the app, and you'll get good workout in a very short amount of time. Always want to talk about being able to understand mindfulness, meditation app, Calm, lots of ones that are out there, Headspace. I mean, again, doesn't matter which one I use. I just want to make sure that our phones and our tablets are bastions of a whole selection of great tools. Fujicate will allow you to actually take a picture of a label, such as the label and the barcode you see there, and will give you all the nutritional information about that, which is also the focus of a new app that was released from some people in France and just came to the States a few months ago, called Yuka, also doing that. So if you're not sure whether that particular package of Pop-Tarts is good for you or not, might not be a bad idea to scan the label and get a reasonable second opinion. Lastly, on this conversation chronometer, which will allow you to actually track all the foods that you're eating and tell you whether you are nutritionally deficient or not in particular areas. Will give you some very enlightening information about the high salt content, for example, and high saturated fat content in a lot of stuff that you get. To me, making sure that these tools help us with our health is as important as anything else. Now, I don't know where these belong other than on my device because they don't fit a particular category, but they're all pretty cool. The last two, Linda, which is now owned by LinkedIn, and Udemy, are two great digital course apps. And Coursera, too, probably should be on that list. They all really do a great job. They're all pay-per-play approaches, but I like the fact that there's courses and focused on stuff that if you needed to learn something and you found that the level of instruction YouTube has a lot to be desired, you're probably not bad to go into these areas to really get some good education. Moving upwards, since I started at the bottom of that list, Stitcher is my podcast preference of apps. Like that, I like, again, it's platform agnostic. I like that. I don't have to be bought into the Apple or the Android mindset to be able to use it. Live Transcribe, really interesting, because Live Transcribe allows you to take your phone and have it transcribe what's being said and put it in big lettering. If you know, people you know have issues with hearing, and I know some folks that I have talked to have used this in their churches to be able to hear the pastor better because they're able to now see what's being said in real time as opposed to struggling. Pretty cool tool. This one's only available, by the way, for Android. I haven't found one that works on the iPhone, and it really bothers me that it's not, something's not out there like that. Lastly, Get Human, which will tell you, want to find a customer service person. You've tried the online chat and it's not getting you anywhere. And then you get into voicemail, you know what, where you had dial 4 and hit 2 and hit 7. Well, you go onto the Get Human app and you put the name of the company in there, and it'll tell you what you need to press on your phone to get past the voicemail cycle to get to a human being. Pretty cool, eh? Next up, I don't use any of these, but people I know do, so I figured I might as well talk about them. Rescue Time for Android only. Rescue Time allows you to actually tell you how long you're spending in social media or in your favorite game or on YouTube, and allow you to limit the time that you spend there. Cloud Convert, which I actually just used earlier today, iOS only, will allow you to take any file, not almost any file, and convert it to another type. So I had an old approach of a movie file that somebody sent me, and I used Cloud Convert, and free of charge, made it into the MP4 that I needed. I do like, on a desktop version, Handbrake as an even more sophisticated tool, but a great, great tool for apps. Grammarly, which people use seemingly religiously to get their grammar better functioned. The only reason I don't use it is I tend to have a specific preference in terms of keyboards on my mobile devices. I like the the Gboard, and Grammarly really works best when it's in conjunction with their keyboard, but people love it. You need some sort of signature app, HelloSign, one of the better ones, and lower price ones that's out there. But again, one of everything. Hey, so what have I missed? I mean, so I'm going to send in a minute or so to Gloria for more Q&A, but I'd love to hear and see in the chat, what did I miss? What's out there? What didn't I talk about? I know there's going to be, I can't believe you didn't mention this one. But before we go there, one more thing. We are in the age of pandemic right now. We need to be really clear on this, that there's a COVID-19 symptom study that you can be part of to at least let people, let the organization, I believe it's Massachusetts Institute of Technology, know quantities of people who have symptoms, don't have symptoms, feeling good, not feeling good. But the thing you need to know is, regardless of whether you have an Android or an iPhone, that the Google-Apple partnership has put customization of contact tracing enabled, disabled on your phone, and you need to know how to access it. Now, since I don't have an iPhone, I can only show the Android screens, but I'm going to tell you in both cases what you need to do. So if you want to see whether you have contact tracing enabled and you have an Android phone, you go to your settings, you go to Google, and then you'll find a link that says COVID-19 exposure notifications. And at that point, you'll see what's on the right side of the screen, whether it's open, whether it needs to be on, for example, Bluetooth needs to be on, and what it does. Same thing with your iPhone. However, in this case, you're going to privacy, health, COVID-19 exposure logging, and you'll get that same level of information. You know, we're not going to get into whether it's a good thing or not a good thing. We are going to say that it's been put on your phone and you have the ability to turn that on or turn that off. So I want everyone to know that that capability and that functionality is out there. And with that done, because we live in a great time, we're going to say they live happily. It took me years to figure that one out. Happily ever after. And right now, Gloria, I'm going to turn it to you and see if we got some questions or comments that people want to know about.
Both, Jim.
Cool.
One of the online participants says Lens can give math solutions and steps as well.
Yeah.
You know, comes to math, that would be a must-have for me if I had to live in that lane.
Yeah. Gloria, then you need to download one of those two apps and test it out, because it's a mind blower when you actually can see that you point your camera at an equation and all the math is done for you. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember the first time that I brought that up to a conference of educators, and the audible gasp that was in the room at that point was amazing. And the utterance was pretty clear, which is, don't you dare tell our students about it. And I had to laugh, because guess where I found out about it from? I mean, they're the ones that knew about it, not the teachers.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't allow those in SATs and ACTs.
Yeah, I hope you're right.
Also, Richard shares that he likes living wine labels. And so I was wondering if that was like, what is that, Vivino And he said he actually, I said, or if you use this for entertainment, for entertaining and wine selection, that was my first thought. And he says first time was to use it to entertain his kids. Lately, it's been to show off in the grocery store for someone not aware of the haunted labels. Neat tack. And then
It's amazing. I mean, I've talking about it earlier, and the living wine labels, and I'm still racking my brain. I'm actually trying to look right now on my particular app to see which one has the best interaction of augmented reality. But it's so cool that it will you just hover your phone right over. I have my phone here, hovered right over the label, and it comes to life. So cool.
wow, that is cool. I'll have to look into that myself. Um, Also, gluten-free apps. We live in a world now of so many food allergies, and celiac disease is
Yeah.
very, very, very life-threatening to people. My
Oh my
daughter's,
gosh. Yeah.
and I'm gluten intolerant, so I use those on a regular basis, not only for shopping and finding out if something is going to be safe for me and not make me uncomfortable to eat, or very safe for my daughter, but there are also celiac-friendly restaurants that list where you don't have to worry about cross-contamination. That's another good one to have too. Library apps, check out books and also download ebooks. Excellent.
Absolutely.
And,
Matter of fact, let me mention that your public library where you live is a great resource. Most of them have digital download capabilities. In fact, at this point, they all do. But interesting, we live in Queens, and my wife has the Manhattan Public Library and the Queens Public Library, and they have different schedules and different availabilities. So wherever you live, make sure you check out whichever public libraries are near you to see which one has the book that you're looking for.
excellent, excellent recommendation. Also, it says if you have old movies on film, can Cloud Convert do anything if you play the old movie onto a screen?
No, it's not going to capture it that way. If you literally have it on film, I think the best bet's going to be able to go to someone who has a conversion device from either 16 or 35 or maybe even 8mm into a digital format. If it was on a DVD, then you'd be able to do it on your own. And in fact, anything from the old DVDs, you just put it into Handbrake and it'll turn it into an MP4, it'll turn it into any of the movie styles. But the old film, I don't think I'm just trying to think this through, if there's a way to take the film, okay, you take the film, you run it through your computer somehow, and then you do a screen capture. I think it'll be really, really choppy at best. But those are the things that we need to be able to save, because there's probably great home memories that are stored on those films.
Right.
So don't get rid of them.
Also, another comment here that came through the Q&A bank is Discord is another good application similar to Slack. Thanks for that, Jesse.
Absolutely.
And then Sandra comes up with that great interaction this afternoon, by the way. Sandra also says, is this session being recorded? Yes. And can I share it with my members? Yes. I run an association, absolutely. And if they're distribution software users, tell them to come and check out TUG. We'd love to have them. So.
Hey, can I actually make an offer to everybody? I know I did this once before, and I had a lot of work to do afterwards, but I have a really cool document that I'd be happy to share with everyone. It's a listing of all the apps that are here, every single one, plus about another 50 or 60. It's my favorite way cool apps and websites. And if people want to just send me a note, my email address, I think still on the screen right now, I'd be happy to send it. It might take me a few days because last time I did that, you guys inundated me, which was a beautiful thing, but I'm happy to get that out for everyone.
And that really concludes everything that I have that's populated thus far. Jim, again, if people want to reach you, jspellows@meetingyou.com.
And don't forget the hyphen.
Don't forget the hyphen, meeting-you.com. Let's see here. I think another thing populated here. Let me just move this over to dismiss. Oh.
It's funny, Gloria, we didn't even get into a conversation about which phone should you get, Android or iPhone, but maybe we'll save that for the next time,
That could unleash World War III too. So Jim, I just want to say thank you so much. As always, it's extremely enlightening anytime you come and present to our TUG membership. We also want to thank everyone that joined us this afternoon, and the population is now coming up and saying thank you. You're welcome, Stacy. Thank you for all of you, our TUG members and guests that are not yet TUG members that have joined us this afternoon. We'd like to invite those of you who are members to continue this conversation in our forum. That would be a great place for all member discussion. Go ahead and start jotting your notes. let's maybe start a trail of favorite apps or things that you stumble upon. And also make sure that you check your inbox for the upcoming registration links. We have an Expert program on Tuesday next week, and also we have the executive panel discussion. Do not miss it. It is not going to be recorded. It is live. You want a front row seat. Make sure that you sign up for that. And otherwise, thanks again for joining us today. And as they say in Hollywood, that's a wrap. Bye now.